All right, you guys, what a unique Because of Sales episode we've got for you today. First and foremost, this is a first for Because of Sales, our first outbound booked podcast or inbound booked podcast. So Kevin got our information, sent us a cold email, pitched himself on why he's a good guest for the pod. And here we are. We've got the Kevin episode. So former enterprise level sales rep was number one at a software company that got acquired, got some equity, fell in love with comedy, had been doing it for some time, and then just pivoted towards the intersection of sales and comedy and selling to Fortune 500 companies. So right now, think of the top three biggest companies in the United States. Okay, you just thought of one, if not a few of Kevin's clients for his business, Laugh.events. So in this one, we're going to see the intersection between sales ability, selling to Fortune 500s, comedic interests, and then entrepreneurship beyond being a sales rep and how he navigated that whole thing. And honestly, it was a fun episode. So before we get into it, you guys, my one and only ask, as it always is, subscribe to our free newsletter. First link down below in the description. It's always going to be free. Every Wednesday, we will give you the most up-to-date pulse on what is happening in the world of sales. You have the skill. Don't pigeonhole yourself into selling only one thing forever if that's not where the best opportunity lies. Because of Sales wants to show you, one, where the opportunity is in the world and how people are capturing that opportunity. So every week we're pulling the best of the best from across the internet and social media in terms of what's working, what's not, what's funny, new AI stuff, and we're sending it to you less than a 5-minute read straight to your inbox. Go down there and subscribe. And now let's get into the pod. All right, you guys, welcome back to another Because of Sales podcast. This week, we're bringing you a unique one, I would say, with Kevin Hubschmann. Is that how you pronounce it?
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Awesome. So Kevin actually, in true sales fashion, did a little outreach and we're like, there's total alignment here. So Kevin is a SaaS seller, Fortune 500, closing 6 and 7 figure deals, who now no longer sells SaaS, but still sells to Fortune 500 companies with his company that he founded called Laugh.events. Basically, you explained it as you being a, what was it, 5 to 9 comic, and then just making a business around that pretty much. Kevin's toured with some of these guys out there, huge names, Netflix specials. You've probably heard of them. And so we were going to get a really cool intersection of like, hey, he had this ability to sell at the highest level where I'm sure some of you guys are hoping to get to where he was one day, and then kind of bridge that over into entrepreneurship, still selling to maybe a similar book of business and just showing you guys what's possible. So Kevin, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Dylan. Excited to be here.
Sweet. So I tried to do my best to give you a proper intro, but you can probably summarize that and elevator pitch it a lot more effectively than I can. So what, I guess specifically for Laugh.events, like how would you explain that to someone who has no idea what it is?
A big tagline I use all the time is I used to sell SaaS, now I sell LAS, but that LAS is laughter as a service. The first 6+ years of my career, I was selling enterprise software to the Fortune 500 and really was able to learn a lot about sales. And I was the first salesperson at a company that recently got bought last year, actually. The time I left, it was like 20, 30 people. So I really got to see the growth of the business. But early on, a lot of it was just me, which was really fun. A lot of failure, which was great because I could kind of fail with no one breathing down my neck. I don't think I had a quota until like my 3rd year, which was pretty epic. But during that time, I was doing stand-up comedy and improv comedy after work. And so I live in New York City, and it was always my dream to just do comedy and get more involved in comedy. So, while I was trying to start my career in sales after work, me and my brothers, my 2 brothers and my best friend, we started an improv group called the Brothers in Flaws. And we would go to my brother's apartment. We'd move all of his furniture out of the way, and we just do improv for 3 hours a week. And it was so much fun. We just laugh our butts off the whole time. But I'd come into work the next day and things felt like a lot easier. My sales calls felt way easier. I was not interrupting the client to talk over them in my pitch. I was listening better. I was being way more curious, asking questions, and also very open to going off script and having slides ready. But like suddenly I wasn't even showing the slides, and I was just trying to have a conversation and trying to connect with people. So it was the first time I was able to see that like comedy skills are very transferable into the sales world. And when I say comedy skills, I'm not talking about like making somebody laugh or having punchlines and dad jokes and whatnot. I'm talking about like improv skills, which are active listening, effective communication, creating supportive environments, being not afraid to fail, take chances, things like that. And so that was the first time I really found that like these comedy skills are sales training. And so I just doubled down. I kept doing comedy training, improv training. I went to the Upright Citizens Brigade after my band broke up, so to speak. The group broke up, and I was like, I got to keep doing this. Did more UCB training to get my feet wet and keep that skill going, keep that brain going. And then I also got into stand-up comedy, which is a whole different set of skills. But those skills started to help my pitching and help me be more succinct with my messaging, obviously doing public speaking. There was just so many different skills. So, once I was able to get all that, I was like, I'm all in on comedy. I got to just keep doing this. And that's when I started Laughed Out Events.
Sweet. Two questions here. One, did sales come naturally to you, the ability to be at least decent to begin with? And then two, same question, but for comedy, did that come natural for you as well?
I'd say sales came pretty natural. I think I didn't know when I went to college, I chose a marketing major because it was just the thing that felt most interesting to me. I think if there was a sales major, I probably would have chosen it, but it wasn't there. I didn't know anything about sales, which I always thought was so interesting. I was like, why of all of these majors is sales, which is what all of these people end up with for the majority, not one of those majors? So I didn't know what sales was because I worked for free for this company for like the first 6 months as an intern because they were like, we don't know where to put you or what to do. But I would do these service calls, these customer service calls, and suddenly they started to see an uptick in them having more email credits or something. I was selling like stuff for like $30 or $100. And yeah, it just was something that people saw that I was able to naturally talk with and be like, okay, you have a need and something that I can help with. And that's where that came from. And so just that personability, I think, was something that helped, and being able to have a conversation with people. And I think that's what you see with a lot of salespeople. Like, hey, can you carry a conversation? Are you someone that's easy to talk to? And I think naturally that was easy. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. So I come from a really big family where, you got to be able to take your licks in terms of like trying to speak and people don't want to hear what you have to say. So you got to make it good. And then obviously being able to talk to people of all sorts of ages. Like my oldest brother's 15 years older. So I was hanging out with their friends and their family and stuff like that. So I was able to, always been able to talk to people. So short story, yeah, I'd say sales did come pretty naturally, pretty good people person. And then comedy, I think came naturally. I always was someone that people would reference as a good time, a good hang, and, could keep conversations going. And like when someone hears that I do comedy, they're like, oh, awesome. Tell me a joke. It's like the worst question you could ask someone. It's like so bad.
Like, sell me this pen.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you're a good salesperson? Let's see it. But I think comedy is like the ability to banter well and the ability to have conversations with people and like what they're saying, you listen to what they're saying and say like, where else can we take this conversation? How can I add on it? How can I add my experience to what you're saying? And not really being like, I got the limelight, let me take it. It's more, how can we come together to create this moment that's very fun? So that's something I feel like always came relatively naturally. And that's also such a synergy between sales. So it all came pretty naturally.
Yeah, I mean, best of the best on both ends, sales and comedy. They probably just have like elite level of emotional intelligence, right? And just like conversational ability. You've probably worked alongside a bunch of different comics similar to salespeople. Do you find that people who, let's say they're not as gifted in that department where it comes to like navigating the social settings and dominating those scenarios, and they're more of that kind of like reserved analytical type like that, do you find those people to struggle with comedy and sales? Or do you think that like they can, they'll find success in their own way, it just might look different?
It's a great question because like when it comes to comedians, that was one of the first things that I found to be so interesting. Like a lot of them are not people in the sense that I guess it's like they're always on and they always have fans coming up to them. And so they don't know if they want to get like real with them. So most comics, whenever I'd meet them for the first time, they have a guard up and they kind of don't want to let you in. And, even a lot of them might not even want to talk to you, period. And they don't want to have that banter. But then when they get on stage, they flip a switch and they are just absolutely dialed. and they're perfect at their craft. They're craftsmen up there. So I think that that was a very interesting realization that I had is, oh, this is an act that they're performing and they're really prepared and focused. So I stopped taking it like personally, like, oh, they don't want to hang with me. It's like they're at work, they're at work and they're actually taking this very seriously and they're ready to go, thinking about their sets, thinking about what they're going to do next, maybe even listening to the crowd around to be like, oh, is there something that I can pull from so that I can get the audience on my side to start things up? So no, I don't think stand-up comedy especially comes naturally. I think improv maybe could come a little bit more naturally. I think you could have like a comfortability, but at the end of the day, if you want consistency, you need reps. And especially in stand-up and sales, there's no difference. So the reps is what makes you become a natural, really. You can have like a liking towards it where you do it once or do it twice. You're like, man, that was a good time. I felt comfortable up there. But it's that second, third, and fourth time, are you able to get that consistency going? And that comes in the form of getting up there a lot and having that comfortability. Because while a comic might not be, wanting to hang to a stranger and talk to a stranger, when they get up there, that's their comfortability. They've been there before, they know where they're at, and they love being on there. And so I think that it can come naturally, and that's what can get you started. But to make a career out of it, you need repetition and you need that fearlessness to keep being willing to fail.
Yeah. Also, the comics, I mean, I'm over here in Austin, Texas, and there's definitely a scene for it now, a growing scene. And I listen to a fair amount of some of the podcasts and stuff that these guys do. And the schedules that they have are crazy, dude. Like with traveling and shows that go late, and then the top of the top ones. I don't know if that's for everybody, but every day they're in like a new city, new state, working some late night show or whatever. And I could imagine like not wanting to just be cracking jokes left and right when you're not performing. Like you're trying to just save your energy and you're kind of like resting. So,
but also it's like, it's who you're around. A lot of comics are comfortable hanging with other comics, and that's where they're more comfortable because they're like, you get it. I get it. They get it. But when you're talking to like a fan, you're like, damn, do I need to be on for this fan? Do I need to kind of show my stage persona? And it's just when you're on all the time, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, I'm in between right now. Let me take a break. But comics are grinders. I mean, that's something that I did not realize and understand going into it. It's like when I was starting out my shows in New York, so to give even more context, I was working at Splash, this company that I've been mentioning, and I really wanted to start throwing my own shows. So they let me throw my own show in the office. And we had like this dope stage lighting. My buddy was like a drummer and like an absolute whiz. And so he helped me produce it. And he was like my Questlove to my Jimmy Fallon. And we were just rocking up there. It was so much fun. And the way that I got the comics was I would just DM them. I'd be like, this person's awesome. Let me get them on. So I was doing like a very much a sales approach, because I had that mentality when I was going into my comedy production mind. I was like, let me just go for the best. Just like I would do in sales. I was like, hey, if I want to work with Nike, let me email the highest person up that I can that runs this department to try to get a meeting. So I had that mentality. I was doing that. But that was when I started to see these comics and they would come late to a gig. And I'd be like, man, what happened? They're like, well, I had to come from Brooklyn and I'm now in Manhattan and I got a show right after this. I can't hang. And then you'd find that they were doing like 6, 7 spots a night. And they're doing 6, 7 spots a night, sometimes for no money, sometimes for a little bit of money, but they're working out, they're grinding so that, when they're ready and they get their shot, whatever that might be, whether it's like Fallon or a special or opening for someone or even building up to get to like a theater position, they're going to rock it and they're going to have the opportunity to, get those fans of theirs to come and continue supporting them.
Who's somebody that, I guess any big names that you've met where you were like pleasantly surprised at how cool they were off stage?
You know what I'd say? And I actually just ran into him like a couple of days ago randomly, but Mark Norman, the man, like he is genuinely great guy. Even when I started working with him in 2019 and I ran into him last week, I still work with him occasionally and he's enormous right now. Just for like context, not that this means anything, but when I first met him, I think he had like 60, 70,000 followers on Instagram. Now, if you look at his Instagram, it's like probably 1.5 million or something. So just if you want to use that for a barometer of anything in terms of how big he's gotten, he's a grinder. He's actually the person I reference when I'm like doing 6, 7 spots a night. That guy works so hard and he'll do little shows, big shows. He just wants to get those reps in and get better, keep spitting out material. And he's also just like he is off stage too. He's very similar to, like, I don't know if you know Mark, but like, saying comedy all the time, like comedy, or, doing, we're doing it. And so he'll just kind of like say all these things too. So he's hilarious.
That's funny.
But yeah, great guy. And he's just a grinder. You really appreciate not just Mark, but all these comics that are kind of in his sphere. They didn't get lucky, they travel. They're like, hey, I'm going to California tomorrow. I'll do the show tonight, going tomorrow. And like, I'll be out all night. And, they're just working so hard, going from gig to gig. And they're just insanely talented on top of being really hard workers. And it's kind of like that intersection of when talent and hard work meet. A lot of comedians don't get like great until their 10th year or so, and that's because they stuck it out, they've grinded, they've gotten their 10,000 hours, and it shows.
To kind of like build the story towards, I want to talk like specifically about laugh events, but I want to work up that way. Did you go straight from school into the Splash?
Yeah.
You said you were sales rep number 1 there, and then just kind of stuck around for quite some time. I'm not so familiar with the company itself, but you did work up to like enterprise level. What was that like for you? Did you start, being sales rep number 1, like, did you start at that level and just like, did it grow from there? Or like, how did that develop over time?
Yeah, so the way I got my job was a friend of mine knew the founder and was like, you should talk to this guy. He's very cool. And, he's starting this company. And I had a 15-minute phone call conversation and he was like, yeah, you want to come in? And I was like, done. It was kind of so crazy and serendipitous. But then the day before, he's like, by the way, this isn't paid. You're just going to come and learn. And so I was like, well, I don't really have any other options. And like, whatever, let me just go. And this company's really cool. I was using the product. It was very cool. When I started, they didn't have any sort of enterprise deal. I think the thing that they were selling the most, they called it like a white label package for $1,000. And if I was lucky enough, I would be on the phone with customer service and sell someone $1,000, and everyone would go absolutely nuts. Like if we got to selling $1,000. But like I said in the beginning, I was slinging vanity URLs and email credits for like $50 or whatever it was. And so that's where I started. And then one day, I think after they like closed their seed round or their Series A or whatever it was like, oh crap, we can sell. I think it was like we got one client and they wanted something custom and they had a whole event schedule. And that's when we decided that, oh, we can create an annual recurring revenue model. And I was there when it turned from like, oh, we figured out the business model. So when we figured out the business model, it was like, we need someone to sell that business model. And so I was there from, okay, now it's not 1,000, it's 5,000. And so now I was dealing with like selling between 5 and 15K. And I remember my first deal was like 20 grand, and it was like my mind was blown that I had sold this, and it was the greatest feeling. But then just as it kept going, the product was awesome, the founding team was incredible, our CEO had everything you need to get more people and take risks on a new company. So that's when I got the opportunity to suddenly start selling high 5 figures or mid 5 and then high 5, and then it was in the 6. And so I was just there the whole time, and luckily I was given this like parachute to just fail all the time because I had a mentor in front of me that was really the head of what was going on. And I got to just really try, and we were figuring it out as we were going. And so that's always my advice to anybody is like, that's such a cool position to be in. You should go after and try to work at a company that's got one salesperson or no salespeople and work for cheap. Because I think like it was like the 4th or 5th year, I had made like more money one year than I had like the previous 3 years combined. And it just went from like nothing to real hockey stick growth in my bank account. And it was this thing where I was like, okay, I struggled, but I'm learning so much because I'm getting so many reps. And then also financially, this is starting to pan out.
I was looking at some stuff over here. It looks like they've raised a good amount of money and they were acquired last year. I'd assume if you were in an alternate reality, if you were still there today, you'd be in a pretty decent spot. So like, I'm curious why you decided to jump off the train as it was picking up momentum to do your own thing. That could be, very intimidating. And, I'm a business owner too, so I get it. But for those listening where it's like, hey, this guy, he worked hard, like internship basically for free, and then started really seeing the fruit of his labor, but then quit for something new. Like, what was the motive behind that?
So I'd been there for 6+ years. And so, from a vesting perspective, I had the stock I was comfortable with too if it went public. Not that it was going public, but if it ever got acquired. So, number one, I was like, okay, I've got enough stock that I'm good with. I also have to buy the stock. So, like, that was another component of like, how much more could I get? But, from that stuff aside, I just felt like I had maxed out. I think there was a moment where I wasn't learning anymore. And then the chance to learn more came in the form of being a manager. And that was just not something I was into. And I think it was not necessarily, I wasn't into leading a group of people, but I didn't really feel like going from an individual contributor and being in charge of my own destiny. I loved that. I loved that I could like grind all night. And those emails that I sent turned into a meeting, and suddenly I had to work with other people that I was responsible for carrying their bag. And it was like, how can I instill that work ethic into them? You can't. I didn't know how to lead. I was given a team to run and I had no idea what to do. I probably also had a little bit of when you're there that early, number 10, and it gets to being like 150 people and people come in after you telling you what to do. I definitely was a little bit entitled as well. So it was just like this mix of like, I don't think I see myself as VP or like senior manager in a sales role. I also like can just tell that my attitude's kind of crap because like I feel like I know better than other people because I'd been there for so long. So the relationship started to feel so toxic. But I stayed around. One of the reasons too is like they let me throw comedy shows in the office. So I was like, I don't want to lose my venue. So I was doing that. And then, I was having a good time. And there was just this moment where I was like, I stopped going into the office and I just only came in to like throw comedy shows. And I was like, I think everyone kind of sees the writing on the wall here. I think our time has expired. And so that was kind of the moment. It was like, okay, my new passion has taken over. And I had decided it wasn't like, okay, whatever. I made a plan. I think I felt it like a year before. I was like, all right, let's start squirreling away some money here. Let's make sure that you got enough money to hold yourself over for a year so that you can kind of just feel out what you want to do next. And so I said, let's do comedy. Let's do comedy, whatever that means. I'm doing these shows. I don't know if it's me being a comedian myself or a comedy producer, but our last show was like February 2020 that I like was like, let's do this thing full time. It had like 250 people. The lineup was like Mark Norman, Stavros Halkia, Sydney Washington, Judah Friedlander, Jared Freed. It was like nuts. I was like, this is great. It's all good timing. Let's do this. And then the pandemic hit. And I was like, crap.
Yeah.
Terrible, but it was good in the sense that it opened this opportunity of corporate comedy. And, these comedians who I was working with over the last year, they weren't actually allowed to work anymore. They weren't allowed in comedy clubs. So that's when I started to introduce comedians to these corporate audiences and work with them. And so that was amazing. And I got that opportunity, and the money I'd squirreled away went a lot further along during the pandemic, And so it was really great timing for everything that the pandemic happening opened a ton of new doors for me and allowed me to take a lot of chances and just kind of launch from my previous gig into this new world.
All right, you guys, quick break in the podcast with Kevin to announce the sponsor of this week's podcast, the Serial Sales Community. The Serial Sales Community is a business that I've been running since about August of 2022. And our sole goal is to help people like you who wants to sell something you really like. And in that process, gain back location freedom, schedule freedom, earning freedom, maybe even through selling in the remote 1099 contracted appointment setting or closing space. If you have the skill and you have a feeling that the vehicle that you're in is not the one for you, or it could be better, or you could have more time back, you could have more flexibility, and you want contractor benefits, check out the second link below. There's some more information on that page on how we help people through that process, how we expedite it and minimize downside. And if you do go through to book a call with the team, mention because of sales, we'll give you 5% off any membership you choose. Now back to the pod with Kevin. Yeah, you mentioned before this podcast, your manager, or I don't know if you said manager or the owner of the company, said something to you that like really made things click. And I think it would be cool to like share that with the audience because, yeah, I think it would be cool to share. So
basically, early on in my career, I was not really sure where I was just doing this. I was like, again, one of the first salespeople. We got a new manager came on. He had brought on like a couple new people, and I had never really been managed before. And he was listening in on one of my calls, and we had grabbed a beer beforehand, and we had really good rapport. And we ended the call. I was like, "What'd you think?" And he like turned around in his chair, and he was like, And he looked at me. It was like, "Stop being so salesman and start being more Hubschmann." And it was this moment where I was like, "Damn, he's right." Like I always went to work with this 9 to 5 personality that I had, and I waited until 5:01 to be like, "It's me. It's the real Kevin. Like let's have some fun." And that was this moment where I was like, why am I holding back the best parts of my personality? Why am I turning this like after work person? Why am I only turning them on when I'm not at work? Some of those things are my superpowers, this authenticity, this ability to connect. And so that was the first moment where I was like, I have to find a way to bring my 5 to 9 personality into my 9 to 5. And I literally did that when I started bringing comedy shows into my office. But I started to just bring those comedy training skills that I was doing with improv and stand up and bring them into the workplace and just stop being such a stick in the mud, as my wife would actually used to say. She's from the South, so she gets away with that. And that's really when I started to unlock my personality a little bit more. And I think it really helped me connect with more people. And I don't think it's a coincidence that my ability to close bigger and bigger deals went up.
Yeah, I think if you're in a opportunity that allows you to kind of loosen up a little bit, you're not allowed to do that, right? Like you have to be the 9 to 5 version of yourself, or they'll go find someone who is. But I've seen that to be really beneficial for people. And this is probably just me because I'm on a very niche corner of the internet, which is like sales and social content. But I've been seeing a lot lately where there's people posting content about them taking sales calls, and they're like entertaining because they make it funny, or like they're kind of like joking around, but at the same time, they're not, because they're actually doing good doing this. And it's just funny how like the less serious you are while still like having composure, you can actually get some pretty good outcome from that. So
it just makes you connect with people more. It's like when you start to, you had mentioned it, like all our branding, like with LaughRx, which is our newsletter, it's like helping people unclench. It's this idea that you need to be like so serious all the time. And I think that there's obviously times to be serious and like really lock it in and be mature. I think that's kind of maybe the phrase that needs to be said instead. Like, all right, let's be a little bit more mature. Like, what would a mature person do in this situation? They'd lock the hell in and like make it happen and work to the best of their ability. But like to be like, let's be more serious. Okay, you're making me tense. You're tense. Like, now we're like, what are we even doing? And most sales is like, the product usually is great. Don't get me wrong. But like your champion is going to go back with you if they like you. They really will. Unless your product is really one of one, and it rarely is one of one. So like you have to find a way to make a personal connection with them. And people can just tell when they're being sold to. So you need to find out what is your ability to not sell. And a lot of that just comes in the form of connecting with people. First off, don't be like, isn't the weather nuts outside? Like, who gives a crap? Like, what is something that you can connect with somebody about that makes you like want to check in on them? How's your family doing? What are your hobbies? Different stuff like that. And how do you make them more connection? And laughter comes from that connection. It's not a joke. You want to hear a joke? No, it's like, let's go back and forth and something funny is going to come out of it. I'm going to laugh. Our endorphins are going to come up. We're going to have that feel good feelings. All right, let's get something going here. Let's make a deal.
So I'm curious, you mentioned COVID kind of threw a little bit of a wrench in this whole entrepreneurship venture for you in the beginning, literally left kind of the steady gig and went all in, and then COVID happened. Like, so how did you end up working into these larger companies? And maybe you talked about it before, but you were selling to these companies in a different capacity. Did you use those relationships to kind of work your way in the door? Did you start from scratch, or like how did you ultimately get to working with like these Fortune 500s?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that it was going to be going from, hey, I do this now and you want to work with me here. It wasn't like that. And I was ready for it to be like that. But it really just came from being open to doing anything. And so I was like, okay, who wants to do this? And I just said, I'm not going to be focused on making any money. I'm going to be focused on creating the best event possible. And so the first events that we were doing were just stand-up comedy shows. And so I had just made a website and I made myself available to people, and I was just ready to win any deal at whatever it costs. And I said to myself, don't be focused on making money. Being focused on every dollar is going to go towards the comedians that are performing. And let's just put together the best show possible. And let's let referrals lead the way. And so I just became really focused on that social proof component. And I said, all right, if I get this one person to do the event, it was the pandemic, so everyone was like so desperate to find something to do with their teams virtually. I would just ask them like, hey, can you publish a testimonial on LinkedIn? And I found that like, okay, every time I asked that, I had 2 new requests for people to want to work with us. And so I just kept using that as the playbook. All right, let me use this social proof and ask people as a favor. And most people were like, yeah, no problem. It's not a big deal at all. Let me just blast this out. You did me a favor by making my team laugh, making me look good. I'm happy to blast this out. So that's just what happened. It became word of mouth. Majority of the people that I ended up working with came from referrals and came from us focusing less on like outbound sales. And don't get me wrong, we had a ton of outbound sales, and that's where I was able to like force business. But year after year, the thing that is always consistent is we get referred to by another company to another company. When you start to get into those bigger companies, you start to become like the system of record for them or the entertainment of record. So it was like, hey, this team at, insert Fortune 500 company here, we're on like a spreadsheet of theirs that everyone's like, yeah, they're a good time. So that really was it. It was just like, let me grind. And I definitely used a lot of my sales skills to get them in the door and focus on that retention. And I just kept asking like, hey, is there any other person at your company or team at your company that can work? Because when you're dealing with Fortune 500, it's not one 10,000 person company. It's 1,000 10-person companies. And that was my mentality. And so when I looked at that, that was my enterprise mentality that I took from Splash of going, okay, what other, not just departments can I work with, but different teams within those departments. And I started looking at it more like a spider web.
Yeah, I would be really interested to hear some of these, like be a fly on the wall for some of these conversations when you're talking to these huge companies. But for them, it's like, okay, we could have Kevin or Kevin's team in here and the employees might laugh and they'll like their job more. But like, how do you actually get this over the line where you communicate that like, no, our service is actually going to give you an outsized return for what it costs? I'm curious what your spin on it is.
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was very obvious. It was like, we need something. And that was the need we filled, was anything. But when the budget started to dry up and people started to look at entertainment as a nice to have, that's when we had to start to look into like, all right, what are we actually giving to people? And so that's when I actually linked up with director of psychology at Harvard Medical School, Dr. Natalie DiTillo, and we started to look into like the science of laughter and like what happens when you laugh biologically. And so we started to look at this now as like a health and wellness perspective of being like, okay, laughter is actually good for your employees. It increases endorphins, those good feelings. It decreases cortisol, the stress hormone. And when you laugh with people, it can release oxytocin, which makes people connected to each other. So that was like the first like ROI that I was focused on, and was like, okay, this is a health benefit. This should be looked at as a health and wellness perk rather than a corporate entertainment thing and a nice to have for a holiday party. And we started selling stuff called 15-minute laugh breaks. And I started saying it was the new cigarette break that you needed to incorporate, but a way healthier cigarette break. And so that was one part. And then the second part was, okay, this is resonating with people. Now, what else are people interested in? And what we started to hear was like, oh no, we want something that's like team building, but also professional development. And so that's when we started to do what we call laughing and development, which is applied improv and stand-up training for teams that is used for offsites, SKOs, annual business meetings, anything that like the teams getting together. Because when everyone went remote, it was like, all right, now we get together. once, twice, max 4 times a year. How do we make this good? And so improv, it went all the way back to when I started. I was like, oh, this is what we should be doing. We should be doing these workshops that are actually going to drive people to have really strong business outcomes and work on these soft skills like listening and communication and taking risks. And there's amazing data out there that we were able to use, which is like huge companies do. Improv is not a new training experience, but what we can make new is making it so focused on professional development rather than a tool for comedians. So, there's data out there that showed that like Salesforce uses this with their sales teams and saw a 30% increase in sales conversions. Google used this with other teams and they saw a 50% increase in like idea ideation and brainstorming. Pepsi used it and they saw a 25% increase in crisis management solutions and situations. So there was just suddenly all this data that I could use to go, that's what we're going into now. We're going to focus. Obviously, we have the comedy and making people laugh, and that's always going to be really good. But we need to focus also on that L&D side of things and focus on how can we train people better, because that's ultimately what people are going to go back to and be like, all right, we're choosing this over another kind of workshop, and how can we get into those budgets instead?
Interesting. So is the workshops that you do kind of the most popular aspect of it now?
I'd say so, yeah. I mean, it's a three-pronged thing. It's one, it's like book a comedian space, which is for MCs, holiday parties, like that's top of mind right now because it's holiday party season. Then is like virtual comedy. Teams that are remote want really great virtual comedy. We have like awesome programs for that. And then, yeah, the third thing that I'm most passionate about, to be perfectly honest, is this laughing and development component, because we're in 30 different cities and we're working with all different types of companies. And we're actually able to be like, okay, this is a team building event that doesn't suck and also is going to allow your team to level up professionally. And the thing that made me stick out the most was like, sometimes comedy can be subjective. And we did a post-event survey all the time. That was like how we understand everything. So for the most part, we were getting 4 out of 5s and 5 out of 5s. But, we'd occasionally get someone that we caught them on a bad day and, they didn't love the show. But when we started to do these laughing and development workshops, we didn't get anything lower than a 4 out of 5 and almost always was a 5 out of 5. And people would say they went into it very hesitant or nervous or apathetic, like didn't want to be there. And they came away with it being like, that was amazing. Like, how can we do more of it? I'm so energized. I'm excited. I'm open to new perspectives. I was totally wrong with how I would feel about it. And it was just this like huge juxtaposition of how they felt before and after that we were like, this is it. This is the secret sauce. And also it's the ability to actually measure ROI in the form of, especially sales teams, like, okay, are we going to make you better at talking to clients? We're going to help you get your talk time down. We're going to get you to move deals through the pipeline faster. We're going to get you to get more closed won deals. So it was this ability to be like, okay, there's real ROI behind this that we can tie it to revenue.
I get the concept and I can see the benefits and I can see the end result being this company's people, whether they're salespeople or not, are just better communicators. They're better at their job, better at making clients happy and satisfied. But like when it comes down to it, let's say someone hires you guys to do a workshop and you said there's like an improv element, what does that actually look like in practice? Is it like, all right, we have this team of 20 people here now. You just like pick someone out of the crowd and just say like, all right, go ahead, like try it. Or what does that process actually look like for these teams?
It's hilarious. Like that's exactly what everyone thinks. And so we stopped calling it improv and we only call it laughing and development, because we would be going up against like a murder mystery or something, or like a Segway tour. And they'd be like, do you want to do a Segway tour or improv? And people would be like, I'd rather do the Segway tour and potentially injure myself than do improv. So we were like, okay, we got to change this, because for better or for worse, improv has become a dirty word. It's either something that people will make fun of because like in college there was like an improv team and they made fun of that, or it's so good, like whose line is it anyways, that you're like, I can't do that. Like those people are so unbelievably funny. I can't do that. So either way, people are like, I don't think I can participate. And that is a big thing that we had to do, was like re-educating people on what applied improv is, what applied stand-up can be. And so what our workshops are, they're anyway as short as 60 minutes. They're as long as 6 hours. It depends on what you're looking to do. But you're not performing for anyone except each other. Very rarely is one person getting up there and performing in front of people, but it's a ramp up. We're starting with really short games that are getting people comfortable with each other, because that's really what improv is. It's about creating a super supportive environment where people feel like they're not going to be made fun of. They're not going to be looked at weirdly. So how do we put everybody in that environment where everyone's jumping in or dipping their toes in first and slowly getting their heads above water and then, doing cannonballs? And so that's how those workshops are set up. Just for like a 90-minute example, I'll give, like, we'll do warm-up game for, I'll just give examples, but like warm-up game might be like something called like a superhero name game is what we call it. You would go around and I'd be like, hi everybody, I'm kayaking Kevin. And I would like do a little move or something like that. And everybody would be like, oh man, that's silly. And be like, hi kayaking Kevin. And then you'd go next and you'd be like, I'm dancing Dylan. And everyone would be like, hey, dancing Dylan. And they would do the same thing. And it's so stupid right now as I'm saying it, but it gets people so comfortable with one another that we're like, all right, we're doing this thing. This is going to be strange. This is going to be fun. And it's like small things like that. And we ramp up. Then the next thing we might do is something called like one word at a time story. And everyone gets together in a circle and we're going to go to a picnic and we're going to say, hey, my name's Kevin. I'm bringing a blanket. And the first time around, everyone's going to say, I'm an item and then no, but. So it's like, I'm bringing a blanket. And then you'd go, no, but I'm bringing a speaker. And everyone would go around and it would be, actually, that's not one word at a time story. This is a yes and game. But they go, no, but I'm bringing a speaker. And you go around and everyone's answer would feel very like individualized. So then you go around again and you're like, okay, I'm bringing a speaker, but this time we're going to say yes or. So it's I'm bringing a speaker, yes, or I'm bringing a blanket. So everything feels very individualized again. But next time we're going to go around, we're going to go say yes and. So I'm bringing a blanket, yes, and I'm bringing a speaker, yes, and I'm bringing some Doritos, yes, and suddenly it's a party. And so now again, we're in this together, we're a group. And then what I love to end, especially the sales stuff on, we call it Whose Shark Is It Any Tank? And it's basically improvised Shark Tank, where we've done all these warm-ups. We feel really comfortable with like generating ideas, being goofy, being silly, being supportive. And then we'll go in and we'll do like make up a bad product, make up a product no one would ever use. And now add 3 features to it. Okay, now make up a song for it. Okay, now give a celebrity spokesperson for it. And now you're going to present it to everybody as a group, and everyone's going to present as a group, and you're going to try to make a deal with the audience who's the sharks. And so it's just this like very fun and silly thing. And at the end of it, you're like, man, what did we just get out of that? That was so strange. But then you realize, okay, the superhero name game has a purpose to it. It's like getting people comfortable, getting familiar, looking at people in the eye, validating people's choices. The next thing is the yes and game. That communication is really important. What we're using words like no or but or can stop momentum, but using yes and can really keep everything going. And then the last thing is like, damn, we went from like nothing into this crazy thing that we're doing. And that's really where like the final thing incorporates all of those aspects. And so I always like to say it's a lot like Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid, where you're like, wax on, wax off. What the hell am I doing this for? And then you're blocking a kick and you're blocking a high kick as well. And you're just going, all right, I know karate. And that's kind of how I look at it, is like there's a lot of subliminal teachings and you're having a blast doing it.
Yeah, I see it. Is there any instances where you've done this with a sales team? Maybe it's the laughter and development, or it's one of the other things where afterwards or after a few sessions or something like that, that this company saw like a notable lift in some sort of metric or anything like that? I know it could be kind of hard to measure like the direct ROI, right? But like, is there any, you've been doing it for a while, I wouldn't be shocked if there wasn't some story of like, hey, we did this and it unlocked this for this team and they were able to go and do this after. Curious if anything comes to mind.
Nobody really shares with us like the data that they have after it. What we usually see is like a notable decrease in like talk time on their calls. Just that small thing of like, okay, what's a focus that we can do so that like next time that's what we want to focus on is like, let's talk a little less, let's listen a little bit more. So that's like something that we've seen teams talk to us. One cool anecdote that I have of one of these sessions was like we did like a networking event for a business school alumni, and there was somebody that was like super nervous to be at this networking event and like hated the drinks component and like the warm plates of food and just never knew like when to jump in to network with people. And then we did this improv session, this laughing and development session. She came up to us afterwards and was like, thank you so much for doing this. I was in the bathroom hyperventilating because I was so nervous to be at this networking event. And doing this laughing and development session allowed me to like get really comfortable with everybody. And after I ended up networking with people like crazy, and I came away with like 5 business cards. So it broke down all of these barriers where you were like, I'm not good enough, or like, I can't do this, or I'm not supposed to be here. Those are things that you might think when you're like, oh, we're going to do improv. That's what it's going to be. That happened when she was just in her normal networking environment. It wasn't until improv broke those barriers down that she felt, okay, this was really effective and efficient for me because I felt like I could speak my mind. I could be myself. I could authentically show up at this thing. People accept me for who I am. And I have a lot of value to bring, and my title has nothing to do with it, or the connection that I can make with them has nothing to do with it. It's really like we're connecting people to people. And at the end of the day, that's exactly what sales is. How do we connect people to people and make that happen?
Is there any sort of like individual practice? Because coming into this, I knew that salespeople, business owners, and anyone who's front facing to the world, if they can go and do like stand up comedy, it's kind of like a super weapon. Like you got to really put yourself out there. And if you can like do it and get a couple laughs and not completely bomb, it's like those people usually are pretty dang good at communicating. But for the people listening to this that are also aware that that exists, but they, maybe their company isn't in the position to afford or work with you guys, is there something that these guys can do on their own to maybe reap some of the benefits of what it is you guys help people with as it might pertain to them selling more?
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to roll it out too for that same reason. People who are like champions internally and are like, gosh, they said no, we couldn't do it, but I really want to do it. So it's just doing improv classes and going and doing an open mic. And so we actually do that. We call it the after work comedy show. That show that I started in my office, we've now turned it into, okay, let's have great comedians, but then let's also have comedians who are not looking to quit their day jobs, who are just after work comics. It's like a Kill Tony like type thing, like where we give them time. We give them 3 minutes to do a set. And we've filmed their before and afters, and it's crazy. They're so nervous going into it. And afterwards, they're like, I just feel like I jumped out of a plane. That was awesome. But there's so much like work and preparation that goes into it. So they really feel what you have to do and get ready for it. But the other side of it is we're setting up after work improv classes where people can just do drop in improv classes. And you can either work with us, or there's a number of different people around the country that do drop in improv classes. And going into it with the mentality of just like, I'm here to just be silly and do something new and have fun. I think that's a really big component. Don't go into it being like, I'm here to level up. It's like go into it being like, all right, let me try something different. Let me get out of my comfort zone a little bit. Let me break up the monotony of what I would normally do. And so that's what I would say. It's like, go check out, there's so many theaters across the country, whether you're in Texas or whether you're here in Brooklyn where I am, there are so many places that offer drop-in improv classes. And that is so great. It's also so much easier than doing an open mic. Open mics are really hard and they honestly suck. That's why I started these after work shows, because I was like, we need a better place for people to want to just try stand up and like perform in front of their coworkers and friends and make it really feel like an experience. So I would definitely say improv's the best because you're not performing for anybody and being like, what do you think? You're just hanging out in a supportive group and you're just like trying stuff out. And that's really what I'd recommend to people is like dip your toes into that because it's a lot of fun It's so much more fun than you think it's going to be. Don't think of it as improv. Take your preconceptions and throw them out the door, because that's what's going to stop you from trying. And yeah, think of it as laughing in development.
Yeah. I regret not asking you this earlier, but I'm pretty naive when it comes to comedy. Like, I feel like I fall in the boat of most people, which is like, yeah, I know some big names and I've seen the super viral, like, stuff that's gone on YouTube and Netflix. What is the difference between improv and stand up?
So, improv, my favorite way to describe it, and salespeople will get it too. With improv, it's like basketball team. And you're on a team together, you guys are playing with each other. There might be one person that like scores a lot of points, but they can't score unless somebody rebounds the ball, outlets it to another person, and sets the other person up with a layup. So it's everybody working together for a common goal to create a scene. And so that's where you hear these mentality of like yes and all this stuff I was talking about of collaboration. It's because when somebody makes a choice, you're then going up and you're supporting that choice. And what's going to happen is that like people that do improv know that like, okay, there's a path that we're trying to get to, and let's follow those rules of elite listening and communication and supporting one another and saying, I've got your back no matter what choice you make. And it's going through that progression. And what ends up being is like tons of laughter of the absurdity of where you let the situation go, and just like really crazy, hilarious stuff. And so everyone always says when you do an improv show, like this show is happening now and it'll never happen again because it's happening in this moment. It's not preconceived at all. Stand up is a individual contributor sport. It's like golf, it's like tennis. You're going up there, you have an act, you're performing that, you're trying to make a connection with the audience. You're going through your act, you're going through your progressions, you're going through your sets, and you're trying to hit your punchlines and your setups. And then you're going out afterwards and you're looking at your stuff and going, okay, how can I take that word out? How can I put a new joke in? You know, I got some laughs here. Let me go again later that night. And you go up again and you try it again. It should be a different audience. Let's hear how they thought of it. And so you're just getting reps with the same material or slightly tweaked material, and you're trying to get a really solid 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you're amazing and you're a professional, you're getting up to an hour and you're able to hold the audience for that long. But, you know, a lot of sets are not really longer than 15 minutes, and that's what you see. So that's the best way to put it. Improv is more of a team game and stand-up is more of an individual contributor.
What would you say to somebody who wants to pop over to an open mic for the first time? Like, what's the best way to kind of chill the nerves and actually get yourself to do it?
I'd say think of a story that you have. I think a lot of people go up there like not knowing what to do. And so I always say like think of a story, and you might be like, yeah, but I need 5 minutes or I need 10 minutes. It's like, no, you need 3 minutes. And try to do a story with 3 minutes and have the story have jokes throughout and punchlines throughout and write it. I'd say like writing it is important, and like writing through it, practicing and knowing what you're about to say. If you go up there and you don't have a plan, you're going to bomb so hard. And I'd say go up there and do that and see how that feels too. Who cares? It's also about like, let's go up there and see like, can I sink or swim? Because you're going to learn a lot from going up there with no plan, and you see what happens, and you'll probably never want to do that again, or maybe you'll try it a different way. But my recommendation of like people who do this after work show is I don't give them 10 minutes. I give them 3 minutes, and I tell them like the best thing to do is a story that you have. That is if you're talking to a buddy of yours and going, isn't this funny that this thing happened? And if you think it needs to be 5 minutes, then you are going too long in between jokes. You're adding too much detail. So cut some stuff out and make it a tight 3-minute thing. And just act like you're going up there and telling a story to a friend and then going about it that way. Because people just want to hear authenticity. They want you to connect and be like, oh, I can resonate with that, or that's a unique experience. So that's always what I recommend to people is like, first off, just go and do it. Just try it. See what it's like to be prepared, unprepared. You know, you can do whatever you want, but getting up there and just having the cojones to get up there and just be like, okay, I'm just going to go up here and eat it. There's experience with all sorts of outcomes.
Some of the stuff we've gotten into has been really interesting, especially like the science behind why laughter is good for these teams and all. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think would be good for the audience of like sales reps and business owners to kind of know regarding what it is that you guys do?
I would say like I just touched on it, but it's this idea of sales and comedy especially stand-up comedy, but just failure and bombing. I say the word bombing, but like think I was just looking at like my pipeline the other day and I was like looking at the closed lost and I was comparing it to my closed won. I was like, "Oh, my closed lost is like 4 times as high as my closed won in terms of total numbers." So I'm like, "Okay, that's a very clear example. It's like 1 in every 4 deals that I try to do ends up not coming through." That's a lot of like what stand up is. Like 1 in every 4 of your jokes might not work. So the goal is to be like knowing that failure is inevitable and that failure is just part of it. And that saying, okay, well, why did that one work? What made that one good? Let me focus on what's good about that and let me try to stack what I did well, whether that's like focusing on that industry or focusing on that title or focusing on like the value add that I brought to it. What makes that deal special? And using the bad to dictate what can be good and learning from your mistakes, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, take what you can with every single learning experience, because that's all what comedy is too. It's just like eating it constantly and still having the calluses to know that you're going to get that win around the corner if you just get back up to bat.
You're talking about your pipeline, and I'm curious to ask you this. I feel like a lot of high level sales guys, when they break off from being just a sales rep and maybe into doing their own thing, for some reason, they don't do the job as well when they're the business owner. Are you running basically the same kind of CRM setup playbook sales wise that you were at your old company?
Sort of. I'd say that's a great question and it totally makes sense. And I think what I would say, the difference between being a sales rep and being a business owner is that you're now responsible for demand generation. And I think that you got guys like Corporate Bro that always crap on marketing people and whatnot, but marketing gets you the deals and marketing is the demand generation piece. And I think for a long time, I just tried to let my hard work win and out hustle. And I just did just straight outbound and hustling. And it worked to a certain extent. And then I realized what I'm not doing is experimenting enough with unique channels to find out, all right, which one of these faucets is actually going to get me deals. And so the moment that I stepped away from it and said, I don't know what I don't know, and said, I'm only kind of focusing on this one channel. And sure, that channel might have gotten me through a year or two. Like, what are other channels, whether that's like partner channels or ads? And within ads, is it Google? Is it Facebook? Is it Reddit? Is it LinkedIn? Is it influencers? Is it podcasting? It's like, what are these different experiments that you need to be doing? And I think that that is my biggest thing that I've learned going from individual rep to small business owner is like, experiment and know that it's a pay to play thing and you're going to probably lose money as you try to figure it out. But if you do figure it out, you've maybe unlocked a whole set of revenue that otherwise would have left untouched.
Yeah, I'm looking at y'all's Instagram right now. I feel like with what you guys do, there's definitely that like viral component, right? And I feel like that could be a huge channel. We're running a lot of like meme related content for this brand. And if we're trying to get the same amount of views through like paid advertising, we have a very small account, but like it's just insane when you have that kind of like viral shareable content. Some of these comedians that you probably know, like they just blow up. You mentioned guy went from 70 to 1 million and still growing, and a lot of them are like that. I could see that being huge. And maybe you don't directly sign more Fortune 500 style companies off of that, but it's more social proof. They're like, oh, people actually want this, right?
Yeah, it's all different types of social proof and like knowing that we work in the corporate space. So I actually found that leveraging comics that I was using for these after work shows actually wasn't working for us because it was like not corporate appropriate. So like I didn't learn that until a couple of years in, and then I realized like, okay, how do I tighten it up a little bit more to be like something that you could show your head of HR to be like, this works. But like another example is like, yeah, memes. Like memes are just like an experiment. Like people will be like, nah, I don't want to do that, whatever. But maybe the memes are what resonates with people and gets that virality. And that's what people are communicating with. And so I think for a long time, I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I don't know how to do it. Or like, I just would like premeditate that it would not work. And That's just such a bad attitude. And I think just experimenting constantly is something that I wish I did when I started. The business would have been way further ahead, but I don't regret it because I got so much learning out of the failure that I had. But that's what I would just tell people is like, take what you learned from your company. You got good CRM hygiene. That's going to be important for the data that you can look back on and see what works. Take one of the strategies that you were involved in or had, maybe talk with your old marketing manager of what they did if it's selling a similar product, and then just get curious and try some stuff and read blogs and teach yourself things and maybe hire a contractor for a month and watch how they do it and then take it over from there. You know, a lot of different ways, but just never stop experimenting and seeing what works.
What's the big goal with Laughed Out events? Like, do you have anything on the horizon in terms of teams or companies you'd like to work with or anything like that?
So I think our big goal, obviously we always want to keep working with great companies. You know, we want to change how improv is viewed and we want people calling it laughing in development and being excited about that. My big goal, and I hope, you know, we talk in a year or so and it's happened, but it's like going and creating a lot more of these like posts where people are able to in Austin drop into a laughing and development workshop to try improv or go and do an after work comedy show and create environments where people can do what I was doing earlier in my career, which is like using comedy as a training tool. And if your company is not going to invest in it yourself, like how can we make it really accessible for people to do improv and drive to go and do it after work or go and try stand up just one night and not have to like say I'm a stand-up comedian and this is my job now and quit your job. It's like, how can I just do that? So like that's my goal. And like even more, like I want health insurance companies to invest in it for people and it be a perk. I would love for laughing and development to become a perk for companies that they're like, hey, we're paying for your gym and we're also paying for your mental gym too. And that's laughing and development. So that's like my real goal is like, how can we make this on like a individual level so people who want to level up don't have to tell their companies to do it for them and they can take the reins themselves.
That would be super interesting. Getting it incorporated into like the insurance benefits. Do you think there's also a side to that where it's just straight insurance company to consumer as well? Or do you think always through companies?
I don't know. I mean, the answer is to be honest, like I don't know how it works. It's all very loopy in terms of like dealing with insurance companies, but like it's not an idea that I came up with on my own. We have companies that come to us and go, we want to do a comedy show for our mental health. And we're going to try to insert our insurance company to pay for it because they give us a stipend every year to use for our mental health. And so it's kind of that going back to that idea of like, just like we had to reframe comedy as not just entertainment. And we had to help companies understand that, like, no, there's a lot of health benefits to doing that. And so they're paying the insurance companies for the stipend. Now, can the insurance companies let them do that and use it for that? Because it is a mental health break and the science is there to back it up. And we have a really cool article in Harvard Health that says, like, are you having a laugh? And if not, why not? And it talks with Dr. Datillo, who is our consultant, and it mentions us and it just talks about the work we're doing. And it was like, oh, cool. Like this is one of the first times it's gotten recognized in like a legit health publication. So that's kind of the real goal and the real struggle at the same time.
My whole intention with this is not for every episode to just be like, oh yeah, here's how you go and handle your sales objections, but it's to maybe have an unlock through a thought-provoking conversation. One thing that's working for you guys that they can take and completely change the way that they do something that results to better yield out of their efforts. And I mean, I think this has been a really cool perspective. I honestly don't know if we'll ever have someone else on that does the same or similar. So
we'll have to come on again then and we'll talk more about it.
Yeah, for sure. Where's like the best place for people to kind of connect with you and follow along for more?
Yeah, so there's 3 places. One, if you want to do a corporate event with your team, Laughed Out Events, that's the website. Go check us out there, submit an inquiry, get back to you. Next up, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Kevin Hubschmann. I post all that stuff there. I do some coaching as well there. And then the last place, we have a newsletter, which talks about comedy's place in a professional development setting. Kind of look at a lot of comedians, whether it's quotes that they have or videos and stuff like that, and kind of be like, this is how you can use this skill in the professional world. It's called Laugh RX, and you can find that at laughrx.laugh.events.
Yeah, we'll link all that down below. But Kevin, I appreciate you coming on. It's been pretty eye-opening for me and how making people laugh can actually be really beneficial to mental health, how much they enjoy their job and their coworkers and just overall performance. But it makes sense. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, you guys, that is the pod with Kevin. Like I told you, a little bit of a unique one, a good blend of that, more serious corporate Fortune 500 sale mixed with entrepreneurship, comedy, trying to do something that you actually enjoy that makes a dent in the world. And that's the episode with Kevin. Honestly, this is a guy I would love to have on a year from now to see what they're up to, and maybe we'll run it back. So if you guys want to connect with Kevin or recommend Kevin's services to the business that you work with, all of his links are going to be down below. And my final ask before we get out of here, go down below, subscribe to our Because of Sales newsletter. We are your pulse on the state of selling. Sales training, you can find hundreds of thousands of hours online, but we want to show you what's going to make this easier, what's going to make it more efficient, what's going to give you leverage, what's going to create sustainability for you while maxing out performance and not driving yourself crazy. You just need to subscribe to Because of Sales and we'll help you do all that. So go down below, first link. It is free, always will be. Less than a 5-minute read every Wednesday morning with your coffee, and your manager might not be too mad if you read that on the clock. So go down below, subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.